conversation together, which has been both sides of the coin. Now, we have delved into number of times on sustainability. That is pretty relevant these days. It's a key moral and it's very strong economical imperative, right? Every organization, there's a focus on sustainability. It has now become a key word even in the boardroom discussions, right? So with that, let me quickly reach to Rupak Saswat from India Glycol. He's the CEO. So Rupak, my question to you would be like, you have been a leader in manufacturing diverse chemical products. You have got focus on the green, right? You also have a subsidiary focused on green manufacturing, right? So with that, in a context setting, I'd like to know from you, so as the audience as well, I'm sure, how are you addressing, sustainability when it comes to your own manufacturing?
Yeah, thanks, Partha. I mean, before I talk about what we do in my current company and what I've kind of experienced in somewhat a limited way, because this world is so large. First of all, of course, sustainability is being talked about as a challenge. And it is not only a challenge, I think it is an absolute imperative, which increasingly people are understanding, but not to the extent that it is really desired. And if I can quote the United Nations Secretary General, he said, I fear we are losing the race. Having said that, I think particularly for the chemical industry, it's a great opportunity. And there are a few reasons why I say that it's a great opportunity. One is that if you go back about a few decades, in the 40s and 50s, a lot of innovation happened. We got new materials, we got polyester, we got paints, we got polymers and whatnot. Those things which changed how we live. But the thing is, by the time we came into 90s, first of all, there was digitalization coming in, or the digital technologies coming in, and we said, look, the chemical industry is a sunset industry, this is the sunrise industry. And then we started to think about sustainability and we realized that we have a big problem. And part of the problem is what we are manufacturing, the way we are manufacturing it, the processes we are using to manufacture it. But this also means that we will continue to have the needs for those products. That doesn't go away. We have new challenges in terms of food, in terms of health, in terms of housing. And look at it this way, there is no option but for the chemical industry to undergo a second wave of innovation. And therefore, in my belief, in the next couple of decades, this is going to be the sunrise industry for the chemical industry. Of course, ones who do not, one, innovate, secondly, adopt technology, to a large extent digital technology as well, will find it extremely difficult. Having said that, so apart from the opportunity, from an IGL perspective, so it's one example. I must confess that from a sustainability product and process perspective, we've got a great story to tell. But we've got a lot to do in the area of digitization. So I have, no qualms in sharing that. So what IGL, for example, has done for a number of reasons, at one point in time, not entirely driven by sustainability many years ago, that it became one of the pioneers, not only in India, but in the world, to use bio-based feedstocks. So that's very interesting. So we became the first company in the world to use ethanol as a feedstock to make ethylene, to make ethylene oxide, to make a large number of derivatives, and many other chemicals. So that, however, has become increasingly important, though there are some challenges with many sustainable solutions here as well. So I think in this area, we see that we will move from ethanol to, we will move from ethanol to other bio-based feedstocks, not only from an IGL perspective. Look, the hydrocarbons will come from feedstocks like cellulose. It's a problem and it's a solution for future. And then we are talking about carbon which goes out of through emissions, which can be converted into very interesting chemicals. Those are also technologies that we are looking at. Apart from that, I think green fuels, something that many of us are doing, is something that we've worked on in some areas ahead of others, but in some areas we are also catching up with others. So, when it comes to fuels, apart from coal, going to bio-based or farm-based, etc., that's something that we are working on to a large extent. We are working on green energy, like many of us are. It's just that we need to accelerate that quite a lot. One, we were fortunate to have access to hydro energy, being in the north of India and therefore Uttarakhand. So a major part of our energy comes from green energy. But we are also tying up for future energy needs to have it come from solar and wind, etc. So that's another big thing. So two of these things make IGL quite good in terms of how it has its carbon footprint for its products, etc. Now, this needs not only making products, but creating greener alternatives for our products. So that's, I'm not going into detail, but you may have a green product, but we need to give greener alternatives to products that people have been using. Sometimes they are more expensive. That poses a challenge. And the big ticket benefits, I was just discussing with Partha that, process optimization is an old word. It is a mundane word. It doesn't sound, very glamorous as does blockchain. But a lot of meat in terms of sustainability actually lies in process optimization. How we did process optimization 20 years ago is different from what we are able to do in terms of process optimization today. So our ability to monitor a lot of data real time, to be able to fine-tune our processes, get our energy cost down, get our batch cycles time down. Imagine this huge chemical industry still has a huge amount of potential in terms of energy reduction to unleash merely by using technologies and innovation to optimize our processes. Going beyond just what IGL does, I think the other big area for the process industry is to move towards biological and enzymatic processes. I'm sure you're all aware of that. But all this will be enabled by use of technology. I was talking to somebody today morning, and she was telling me about how technology and accelerated innovation, she used a particular term for it, was absolutely crucial in our ability to develop the vaccines that we developed for COVID. Had it been, say, 10 years ago, it was a 5-year or a 10-year project. So we probably do not understand it. It was in action, happening here, and it changed many things for the world. And there are tremendous opportunities in small ways for us to do that. The other thing that all of us are doing, and we are also kind of looking at, is especially when you're looking at the circular economy, in short, what it means is that you are going to use a number of molecules which will come with your feedstock, make sure all of them, one, get used, and are produced in a form where they remain reusable. Of course, there are many other cycles of reusing it. So we are doing a lot of work in trying to create value from waste. People who are, for example, we happen to be somebody who are doing a lot of fermentation. There's a lot of carbon dioxide we are producing. Now, to think of it, it's one ingredient for hydrocarbons. So these are some of the areas that we are looking at. I'm sure there are so many other areas, but I quoted to you examples of where I have seen some of this work getting done.
Thank you so much, Rupak, and thanks for giving your thought process, starting from the feedstock, then getting into the hydrocarbon, and then how the technology can overall value add for the sustainability part of it. And pretty good to see and know that you believe, most of us, rather every one of us believe that it's going to be a sunrise industry. It in fact already is, and that's where the focus is. And so now let me come to Prakash Raman, who is the managing director of Silox India. So Prakash, as Silox, you have been a global manufacturer of inorganic chemicals. You are deeply rooted into the Indian chemical landscape. So with this diverse product range, manufacturing, I also want to hear from you, what's your vision on sustainable manufacturing? And if you can also touch upon how do you value people? Because people are very critical to sustainability, like minimizing hazards, minimizing exposure. You can give some thoughts over there. I think that will be good knowledge for all of us. Over to you.
Thank you. Sure. Okay. As said, maybe your name is Silox India, but formerly we are Transpix Silox. Okay. So it gives a very interesting combination of an ownership and long-term relationship between an MNC and a very strong local partner. So when you started thinking about maybe how can we just improve upon the sustainability initiatives, okay? So we really need to define, because we do have certain strength, but also we do need certain time to make a complete overall process, okay? So we just started focusing on the things what we can control the most, about our product, about our operations, about our supply chain. But also the biggest impact will be start coming from how can we influence our customer in terms of usage of our product, okay? But it is going to be very challenging until otherwise you keep your house in order, maybe to just go and make a recommendation, make the change in how the customer can use your product, or maybe change the behavior. So essentially, we started focusing on like maybe typical like any other industry, like maybe what is going to be the most impactful one, like obviously like the water. Okay? But here the very interesting thing is like maybe unless you measure, you don't know like what you are using it. Okay? And that's what we started putting like maybe all the places where our water is being used. Okay? So once we know the measurement, but the very interesting point in this journey is about the involvement of the people, okay? The most impactful ideas came from the union employees. Okay, that's very, very interesting to know, like, because most of the time we think the sustainability has to be top-down driven. Yes, maybe initiative has to be top-down driven, but the involvement of the people, once you make it the wider on the organization, the amount of benefit we get, it will be very, very nice. But for example, like within our 9 months of our journey, we are able to optimize the water usage by close to almost 34%. And almost like 29% of the idea, but the savings ideas came from the shop floor people. Okay, that's a big, very big learning for us. And another journey, like maybe which is on about the energy. Like for example, we used a lot of steam. We used to use extensive, like maybe the oil, furnace oil or the electricity, but by end of this year or beginning of next year, almost 95% of our steam will be generated from the biofuel. And also like 45% of our energy need will be from the sustainable source. It's a combination of wind and solar. So these are all like maybe like we are able to do it because we can control, we can take the decision on it, but still like maybe because one of the biggest market what we serve is the textile market. Right? For example, we did an initiative, like we made a product which is being, it's sort of like maybe ready to use, I would call it, and which can simplify the operation at the customer. But the biggest learning for them is when we went to the market to just make a trial with this product, we told them like you can save this much of water usage, this much of electricity can be conserved, but we got a big upset. Even though the product worked, the customer did not accept it. Because they don't want to change it, they don't see the benefit, like maybe because in terms of I'm going to save like maybe something like maybe 20 KL of water per year, which is not significant, but hopefully because we are not able to influence the change in the consumer behavior, customer behavior, because we are a very small portion of their value chain. I think that's the biggest challenge, but that will bring us the biggest impact. If I'm able to convince the customer to move to this kind of system, that's where we'll start seeing more and more benefits, okay? But it's a journey. So our main focus is on what can we do to improve ourselves, and maybe we continue to work on our optimizing our packaging, optimizing like maybe how can we transport the product, optimizing. So we are still continue to focus on what are the things we can control, but there is a big opportunity exist in terms of the changing the consumer behavior or our customer, how do they use the product. I think that's going to be part of our next journey.
Thank you so much, Prakash. I think that's a pretty good thought exchange, and you emphasized even on the utilization of the product by your consumers, and that scenario probably could be one of the highlight going forward, where from, it could be a learning experience for the whole ecosystem as you talk about sustainability. And at the same time, you spoke about resource optimization, minimizing the water consumption, minimizing even the energy consumption. And it was pretty good to see that 45% of the energy we're looking at through renewable energy. So that's going to be supporting the decarbonization goal. Pretty good to hear about this initiative that you have in Silox. So now let me move to Ranajit Sahu, who is from Accenture, and he's the Vice President for Strategy and Planning over there. So like, as Accenture, you have been working as a key advisor and consultant to lead customers. So from that perspective, Ranajit, if you can throw some ideas on, your discussions with customers, the emphasis on sustainability. What is that, you're trying to do it differently to get the buy-in from customers on sustainability? Maybe something on the supply chain, that's an important part of it, right? And if you can also throw up on something on like the linkage of sustainability as well as the capital markets, with the capital markets, on the viability point of view. So it'll be really good knowledge for all of us. Over to you, Ranajit.
Hi, everyone. So I think, when we ventured into this journey talking about digital sustainability, a few years back, and especially when you go to the organizations talking to the CXOs, they'll say that, okay, it's a discretionary spend, it's just a requirement that we have to do it, right? Just for satisfying the shareholder requirement, okay? So it was very difficult as a selling piece, how do I sell sustainability? How do I sell digital in sustainability, right? And today I believe that we are in a post-digital era, right? Where, a few years back we are thinking about digital, now digital has become a way of working for everyone, right? So here, when we talk about the value case or the business case of digital in sustainability, typically, the entire influx of technology or digital started with the concept of, sir talked about operational efficiencies. People talked about, ability to monitor and measure the performance of your equipments or your resources, etc. Right? But wherever there are pocket of efficiencies or inefficiencies, there is an association of cost leakages, right? And that's where the starting point is, right? Your first primary objective might be to improve the efficiencies, but if I look at it, what we call it within Accenture, the concept of, a concept of zero, right? And we are proud that we invented zero. Now, how do we apply zero? It's a zero-based budgeting, it's a zero-based operations, it's a zero-based costing, it's a zero-based supply chain, right? In every aspect of your value chain, there is an impact where you can be able to reduce cost, you'll be able to improve your efficiencies. Now, let's take an example, right? If I look at the value chain, if you look at from the aspect of your, your supply chain cost reduction, right? There is an involvement, it's a huge cost of scope 3 emissions, like it's a contribution of almost 70% in this industry, right? Now, how do I look at it at optimizing it? Now, you have used the same technology for typically just track and trace, right? What we typically do right now. But the same thing can be used as an input for you to do a better logistics and a network planning and reduce your cost of logistics, right? And the overheads in terms of the fuel charges, the detention damages that come with it, that can be optimized. It's a huge value lever for the organization. Second, if I look at from the aspects of manufacturing, right? We tell that, the same systems, whether it is everyone in some shape and form, you might be having your MESs, you will be having your PLCs, or you will be having your bed level of automations, right? Now you are using it for process controls or process excellence. Now, how I can monetize that data, right? Pulling in from the systems, and I can say that I'll be translating it to an aspect that can be looked at. I can improve the operability of the equipment, reduce the maintenance downtime that can come with it, right? What we call it as the OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. If I improve that the cost of downtime, the loss that happens, the production loss, it's a huge value lever for me in terms of the cost. Similarly, if I look from a perspective of the revenue upliftment, how do I look at it? Because I'll typically say that I have, across my experience, across clients, for the same company, when you have different manufacturing units at different locations, your entire modus operandi of planning, scheduling, and your execution is very different. There is no lack of standardization. How do I bring the aspect of integratedness, right, in my entire value chain, where I say that, I'll be able to populate all the data point or the touch points, right from your planning, right from your operations, right from your equipment, right from your resource productivity, right from your, your entire, the downstream activities of logistics, sales and marketing, right? So all these aspects, when I'm bringing it all together into one platform, right? And I'm able to analyze and throw those data points and translate it into savings or in revenue upliftment. Now, this data, it's not only residing with the manufacturer. What I want to do is that sustainability is not about just a producer mindset or a shareholder mindset. It's the stakeholder mindset, right? Everyone has a role to play in this chain. Now, everyone will get a cost advantage or a revenue upliftment in the business. Now, how do we do that? When we talk about, I'm doing sustainability as an organization for my manufacturing. How will my supplier get engaged with me? What is the incentive for him to do that, right? So what I'm trying to do is that by bringing this aspect, we talked about technologies like blockchain, where you are able to trace the entire value chain, right from the supplier's premises to the manufacturing unit to the consumer, so that you know that what is the consumer preferences, the patterns, etc. That is a very good input for the suppliers and the manufacturers to know that if I have to look at aspects of value engineering, for example, right, that will be something which will help the supplier to innovate and find mechanisms to co-innovate with the manufacturer and look at optimization levers. So that is where we say that, you are able to do a strategic sourcing cost reduction, right, as a manufacturer. Second, on the downstream time, what I'm passing on to the consumer, what is it in for the consumer, why they are doing it. Because of these efficiencies that I'm bringing it in the chain, I'm able to pass on to the benefits in terms of the pricing that I quote to the consumers, right? So when I look at it from a sustainability and digital in sustainability translating into a value, I think this is where the true value unlocking happens at each of these pockets, right? So I think what we have to move out from the mindset is that we think from a perspective have just siloed or pocketed approach that, today, okay, hey, I put some digital here in my manufacturing setup, okay, it is going to help me get some data points and I can monitor the process. No, I think you have to look from a perspective that how that data can be monetized and converted into value in terms of whether cost savings or whether it is in terms of improvisations in your production or your products. That is something which you have to look at. Right?
Thank you so much, Ranjit. And I think there was a pretty good insight. Like, you spoke about how the opportunity is existing for exploring sustainability across the enterprise, connecting, all the departments, right? And getting the best out of it, correct? And you also spoke about OE, which is very, very critical because the moment, whenever a higher OE is achieved, it's like you are getting the best yield out of your existing infrastructure. And at the same time, when you spoke about downtime, right? If there's a high downtime, it would be like an opportunity lost, which you could have utilized for doing some more production, right? So that's a pretty good thought, and I think it is pretty much aligned to the current need. So now let me go to Ramnath Vaidyanathan from Godrej, and again, from the manufacturing point of view, Godrej as a company, like, when you know that you have been manufacturing products that you believe in, right? And at the same time, you talk about like, business of business is goodness, right? Yeah. That's what pretty much about Godrej, right? And you have diverse product range as well, right? Yep. You are trying to make the world safer with a different product range. And at the same time, you are manufacturing products which is for people's safety, for example, warding of mosquitoes, right? And at the same time, manufacturing products which will be making or helping our farmers flourish, right? So with diverse range of products which are pretty relevant to the chemical industry. What's your thought on sustainability and how you're bringing that into your manufacturing, right?
Yeah, thanks for that. In line with what the other panelists have said in terms of manufacturing, to be very honest, we've done excellently. I mean, as most companies were here mentioning on terms of uptake of renewable energy, improvements in energy efficiency, water efficiency, zero liquid discharge. But what we realize is, and it's a very sobering thought, if all of us are doing so well, why aren't we moving the needle on a global scale? I mean, the problem of climate change doesn't seem to be getting fixed. Water is still an issue. Plastics are an issue. So clearly there is more to be done. So I think the biggest realization was that this is where technology really comes in, is to solve three particular issues in the next phase of sustainability. One is, of course, tightening our operations and manufacturing, which we've all spoken about, which pretty much runs on autopilot for most mature industries now. They have annual targets for reductions of energy and water and things like that. But supply chain, speed at which change has to happen, and linkages. This is where technology can really, really help us. So we've moved now from the first decade where we focused on the process to now looking at the product. So again, that was also fueled by technology. So the LCA became pretty much the bedrock of what we wanted to do. You mentioned about products. And we realized that the product has to be the unit at which we're looking at sustainability. So the session before on product stewardship was very important for me because ultimately we need to start making better, greener, safer products that also address various social needs. Absolutely. So while we talk about the environmental sustainability of products, there's a social need which also has to be fulfilled. So I think using the LCA approach to really map out from sourcing all the way to end of life and disposal really gave us a very big insight. I'll just give an example of one of our products, for example. We'd been working very hard on improving the manufacturing operations of that particular product, in terms of great energy efficiency. We've doubled the energy productivity there. We're using 70% renewable energy in that factory. But when we did the LCA, we found that the biggest carbon emission from that particular product was in its use phase. So that was a massive eye-opener for us because we said, okay, we've been focusing on this for the longest time, but the real problem lies somewhere else. So why don't we think of some R&D projects to reduce the emissions in the use phase? Obviously not a very easy thing to do because we were talking about influencing sustainable consumption. I think that's where we're not in our comfort zone. That's where we need the help of technology because we are not, our role ends with the sale of the product. But influencing consumers and how do you use a product sustainably, that's where we need technology, we need marketing, we need influencers, we need the larger community to really play a role over there. So I think that the main role technology has to play today is not so much for me in the iterative improvements that we see. That, of course, will go on and we'll only get better and better as technology improves in terms of predictive analytics, in terms of energy efficiency optimization at real time, which is basically changing set points as things move along. That's a given. But where the real challenge for technology and sustainability is how do we solve these larger problems? How do we look at ESG as a whole, and how does technology enable solving those issues? Not just from the process side, but from the overall product perspective. And that's an area where we really need help with, and that's what we're looking at technology to do it. So if you look at our next 5-year journey, I can't think of a single target we've set for ourselves where we don't need the help of technology or digitization. I don't want to limit it to digitization because I think technology goes beyond just that. For example, things like material risks, which has become, like we're talking about ESG strategy becoming critical to the boardroom. But it's still being done in a very manual, slow sort of a way. And by the time you've set one set of risks and acted on it, the ecosystem has already moved on. So how do we have something which is more real-time in that sense as well? So technology as an enabler of ESG strategy rather than this process. I think that's where we're really looking at it to really help out today. But we're very positive because some of the best solutions you find are coming from small startups working on technologies who actually have their pulse on solving real world issues. And what we probably as an industry have to do is provide enough platforms to be able to scale up these technologies. And not go typically look inwards only, but look outwards and have more collaborative approach towards developing these and sharing more data, sharing more insights. Because I always say this, every time we meet all the sustainability professionals, it's a great profession to be in because they're not competitors. We're all in the same boat. They're all trying to solve common problems. So, this is the only place where sharing of information, sharing of insights, and sharing of best practices is actively encouraged. So I think technology should be in that same boat as well.
Thank you so much, Ramnath. I think you also touched upon some of the key aspects here. One is the holistic connectivity of the industry and the industry and manufacturers coming together, sharing their experience and disseminating it so that from that people can take further takeaways for influencing some of the business outcomes going forward. That's pretty critical. And you spoke about, let's say, for example, the approach of product and process together, not anything in isolation, right? That's something is also the need of the hour. Otherwise, the impact or the better utilization probably would be lost out, right? And pretty good to hear that. And what you said, like collectively, everyone should step up and bring agility to the whole process, right? That's important, right? It's like, there has been a discussion, there has been agreement on the key need of this, but subsequently the real-time implementation is taking longer time. Then, we again need to collectively look, how to bring agility over there because there has to be some demonstration real-time. And thank you so much for alluding to that idea. And with that, I'll come to the next question here. Of course, some of the part has already been addressed. Present day, we are talking about moving from a linear economy to a circular economy, which is like the responsibility not just, gets concluded when the product is manufactured and goes to waste. It is like beyond. It is about recycling, reusage, and making it sustainable. So with that, let me take the point of view of Rupert. Like the product that you are manufacturing, you've got a green initiative. Now, when the product is moving out of your factory and for usage by your customers, any specific responsibility that you are owning and supporting your customers so that it is responsibly used to meet the goals of, again, sustainability over there?
So I think what you're asking me is to touch upon the product stewardship aspect of it, especially after the product is made. So there are two aspects of that responsibility. One is making our customers aware of the benefits of a product, making our customers aware of the challenges in the use of the product, often something that is neglected, and quite a number of times the bigger challenge lies there. Not only do I have to make the customers aware of what we are doing, which is quite easy for me to say, I'll make the customers aware, but I have realized over a period of time that it is equally or perhaps more important to engage in a manner so that I can learn from our customers. Not only learn from our customers, I think learn from our vendors. When we are talking about product stewardship, I think vendors and customers are two sides of the same coin. I don't know, for whatever reason, the relationship is not exactly the same. It is an unequal relationship, and it is high time that our collaboration extends equally in terms of its width and depth with our customers as well as our vendors. And great organizations even today are investing a lot of time in working with the vendors as well as customers to address these issues. Coming to the specific point of how we work with our customers, I think the first thing is not only it's one thing to make them aware, but quite often the maximum value in terms of either sustainability or other benefits comes by collaborating with the customers to create that value. A one-sided approach of I have made it and therefore I'll have a sales pitch and I will sell you is something that is not working as well, because we are trying to address a problem in not only the entire ecosystem but the entire planet, which extends beyond not only industry but beyond humanity and life on this planet. So I think that's extremely important. So we've worked, for example, I'll give you 2 examples, on bio-based products with our customers throughout the world. Sometimes the need may be in different parts of the world. So we've worked with bio-based MEG, for example, for manufacture of polyester. One example of what IGL has been partly lucky and very fortunate to be able to work on is technologies like carbon smart products. Now, what are carbon smart products? Carbon smart products are products which are made by capturing carbon which is going out into the atmosphere through emissions, for example. So we had a great example of a collaboration where IGL, LanzaTech and Unilever worked to make some carbon smart products for their cosmetics industry. And to be honest, we had to learn a lot from Lenza, and we had to learn a lot from Unilever, and we had to learn a lot from many other products. Another example closer home, which we've done in my previous organizations, and I think it is a little more easier to relate, as well as in the current organization, is, for example, shipping a hazardous product to our customers. Now, it is both a safety hazard and it is an environmental hazard as well. So it is a good case of something that could not have been done unless we worked with the hauliers, with the customers and ourselves, and leverage digital technology in great ways. Now, it is fascinating to actually know that the amount of technology just a 20, 30, 40,000 rupee phone has is something that we do not even leverage 1% of. For example, face recognition. Can you imagine our phone and my phone and your phone has the capability to recognize millions of faces and billions of fingerprints? Imagine the amount of power digital technology has, and that's changing quite rapidly. So in this particular case, for example, in order to ship that product in a manner which we are satisfied, and you have to address people issues as well, technologies like GPS is enabling us in great ways. So using GPS and using real-time transmission of data, for example, we could know the conditions of the product being shipped and the location of the product at any point in time, and without spending much money, have alerts which can be programmed without spending much money. So if the temperature and the pressure and the combination goes in a particular direction, the required people and the required kind of alerts can be cascaded. Very simple, but once done, very effective. So if you're talking about how powerful this is, the other hazard on Indian roads is not only the roads, but it is also the behavior of the driver. Apart from, of course, coaching and training, but you could use technology, for example, one of the challenges we face, and I'm sure many of us you are facing, is that, the driver who takes the truck out of the gate is not necessarily the driver who's on the road. And so even making sure, using similar technology, and the reason I gave this example of a phone is that our phone is actually far more capable of doing things even better. So you could actually ensure that the driver who has been trained is actually driving the truck in very simple ways. Not only that, you could use cameras inside and outside, for example, and artificial intelligence sounds like a big word, but it is amazing what these guys are doing. And it's not very difficult for them to have a camera inside a truck, for example, and outside to continuously also monitor the behavior of the driver. Let me give you an example. If a driver at any point in time is not wearing a safety belt, you could shoot out an alert. People who are aware of what AI is capable of, this is nothing. Similarly, the driving behavior at any point in time, or if he's dozing off in between, that can very easily be caught, and alerts can be not only issued to people who are monitoring it, but also alerts over there. You could actually stop the truck. Or if he's taking a route which is not safe, all of this can be programmed. Not, I was sorry to extend. It is just amazing. There was an earthquake a few days ago, and when I Googled for it, just about 30 seconds after I felt it, I actually saw that it was an alert on Google. So I was wondering, how does it come? Who's posted it? So actually, this is all happening through sensors, through technology which is being connected without any human intervention. So there's a lot we can do without any human intervention and prevent a lot of damage. This is just one example. When we are using it for a haulier, now imagine what you can do for a plant. We used to have smoke detectors, for example. I think in some ways, smoke detectors are there, but you could have much more inexpensive, much more powerful technologies. For example, a powerful camera or a couple of cameras which have the capability to monitor infrared and heat and so on could actually pick up hotspots in your entire plant much better than smoke detectors could do. And, and talking about what it can do, and when you look at data coming in from so many points, it could actually be translated into very useful insights and smart decision making. So it's just fascinating, and we as kind of oldies now are just trying to catch up with what technology is able to do.
Thank you so much.
And it's so under-leveraged, I feel, but we know we have challenges. Yeah.
So pretty good to hear. It's like you are leveraging technology as a governance to have best of the product usage for your customers across. Hello? Yeah, of course. So it's like, you're leveraging technology as a governance to instill those best practice usage for the entire ecosystem, whether it is utilization of the product, then at the same time, utilizing the entire logistics, like bringing in the safety aspects to it. Like, for example, the drivers who has been trained, they should be in the driver, they should be the driver who are driving those vehicles on the road, right? So it's like, it definitely is synonymous with your initiative on helping this society and the nature together. I think pretty good, and kudos for that. And you also spoke about a couple of use cases which are relevant to digital, right? Which was my next question. So with that, let me come to Ranajit on the digitalization, like to help unlock the value of sustainability. From your experience and as an organization, you have been also discussing with your customers on this subject. So what's your knowledge dissemination here in the audience? How people can take next steps to deploy digitalization in their manufacturing facility or enterprise-wide to unlock the value and make their enterprise more sustainable? Maybe some good use cases, which can give the direction to a lot of people and then try it out back in the manufacturing factory itself.
Sure. I think, the first thing is that when we think about digitization, or you talk about technology transformation kind of thing, it's not about just, putting some technologies, okay? Now it's a transformation in the mindset, right? As an organization, when you're going for such kind of a program, the first thing that comes to your mind is that, there are different school of thoughts. If you're talking to your top management, they will say that, okay, there is a requirement, I have to have certain investment in digital for all the aspects of operational efficiencies or, my productivity aspects or safety aspects, right? But then that has to be digital for everyone, right? Now I am talking about the other set of stakeholders, like your operators or your safety workers or your, your employees, right? What is digital meant for, right? So when we go for such kind of interventions, it's an integration between business value, the people value, right? The stakeholders that are involved, and obviously the digital has their own sets of independent value that you bring to the table, right? So it's an integration of, it's a nexus of business, technology, and people coming together when you're going for such kind of transformation. Now in digital, Now there is different scales of maturity. Typically when we start our journey with the clients, what we do is that we start off with the maturity assessment, right? Because everyone says that, okay, everyone keeps on hearing about words like, now everything is accessible. When you talk about applied intelligence, you talk about machine learning, blockchain, there are so many technologies and you will get lost in the market, right? It's very fragmented. Now, does it anything and everything can be done for an organization? The answer is, it has to happen in phases, right? I have to assess the firm's current maturity, the business case for it, right? Because there has to be a specific use case for a specific set of clients, right? It cannot be that one solution fits all kind of approach. So when we start off with this transformation journey or interventions that we propose, we look from the perspective that what are the burning use cases or the requirements that the client is looking for, right? There are clients on one side of the table who don't even say that, when we typically talk about transformations, we have done a survey, I just wanted to highlight you, that, digital transformation typically fail, and it's like more than 65% of the initiatives actually fail. Now, people might think, hey, I got the best vendor for the market, right? Who got me the technology. I paid the money for it. Why it's not working, right? So the point is that the transformation, when you look at it, you have to look at the aspects of it's a value for what I'm trying to solve for, the problem statement. Now the problem statement at this point of time for a company X can be, okay, immediate pain point is that I don't have visibility. That's fine. I just need to have the basic level of digitization of the process data or the input data so that I can get a visibility. That is okay. Now that same company, if I go and sell that, no, you have to go for machine learning or advanced analytics, that's not going to help because I don't have the foundation in place, right? Now, if I'm looking at optimization, I'm looking at future of it, I need to have the basic infrastructure, digital or technology infrastructure. Then there is a second set of, stakeholders or the clients who say that, okay, I know what is digital. I have invested a lot. I have a certain level of maturity. From here, how do I make a leap in the, the digital transformation journey? There, the problem statement is different, where you already have the maturity. Typically, what happens is that your interventions or your solutions are addressing specific use cases or pointed solutions, right? Like, for example, you talk about operator safety, right, or productivity. I put some sensors, I get some tags, smart tags and all. I monitor the movement of the operators. I know that where they're supposed to work, are they working in the right locations or not? So that is a very specific use case. But the same intervention, when I connect it with my equipment efficiency, when I connect it with my schedule, okay, then I get to know that I can do a dynamic planning of my operations, right? So the same intervention which was thought through as only from a perspective of safety and productivity is now being used for decision making to plan my operations better the next time, right? Because I'm able to pull that same information of the productivity matrices, I'm feeding it into my plan, and I know that, now I'm planning which is more closer to the ground operations, right? The execution pattern. So that's the second level of maturity we bring into the clients who already have invested and have a certain specific interventions in digital. Now the third level, which is like, what we call it as the smart plant or digital plant of the future, right? Where we say that, everything at pockets are being taken care of. There is a sense of integratedness. Now, if I want to, can I have a remote operations and control center, right? That's the future which I am targeting because the base infrastructure, the maturity of the data, the systems are there in place. Now I use it for decision support and integrated monitoring aspect of it, right? So that's the third level of maturity. So when we talk about how digitization, what is the digitization to be done, there is not single solution. You have to go with a phased approach. You have to go with an understanding of the current maturity of the client. And you have to go that what is the vision that the client has thought through when it wants to go from X to Y, right? So that's how we approach.
I think you give a very important perspective, and digitalization is important, right? And at the same time, you cannot overall the whole enterprise at one go, right? It has to be phase-wise, then scaled up, basis the need. But digitalization has to be basis some objectivity. There has to be some prioritization, right? Yeah, somebody can start with one or two use cases and then expand it based the need across the enterprise, right? That's very, very important, right? And thanks for sharing that. In fact, being an evangelist of digitalization, whenever you do the discussion with the customers, that kind of approach is definitely to help to see a lot of more footprint of digitalization in the manufacturing, right? And as Rockwell Automation, we also do a lot of value add there. And I think I really like the approach of scaling it up, starting slow, and then expanding across so that you reap the benefit of digitalization with some use cases, get some benefit that gives a lot of motivation and confidence, and then deploy for some other objective and purpose. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just a follow through, you want to add something?
No, that's okay.
Yeah. Just want to bring a follow through question here, like, are you seeing digitalization as a use case for, let's say when it comes to smart manufacturing, let's say, minimizing energy or throughput optimization? You spoke about OEE. Is this something you're seeing very popular and people are starting at least with those in their manufacturing facilities?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, how typically the approach happens is that first we starts off, with the concept of we are able to measure it or not. I think it start off with the typical standard energy management system kind of thing, right? Where you are able to capture that for each of the processes, what's the energy consumption that is happening, right? Second stage of it, once you have the basic information about the energy consumption and optimization, second part is that you have to identify the process efficiencies, right? I'm able to know that what is getting consumed right now. Second is that based on the capturing the OEE information of your equipments, that are there avenues or pockets of where I can optimize my utilization of my assets, right? So that the energy consumption might be today X, can I reduce it to X minus delta X? Because then I get the asset level intelligence, which I capture from this, whether you talk about, your MES or you talk about retrofitting of sensors on your equipments, etc., to get those information, right? Now, once that is in place, the third level of maturity from there, you move to say that, okay, now when I look it in a way of connectedness, because now I'm moving out from a very package specific or an equipment specific, intervention of optimization to a entire plant specific optimization, right? Where there can be process, it's a typical theory of constraint kind of framework, right? We say that, one particular facility is going to be a bottleneck. How I can look at optimization from the aspect at a overall plant level, right? So the digitization intervention, when you are scaling it up from your equipment to your package to your overall integrated plant level visibility, you can have additional pocket of efficiencies to optimize on the inefficiencies which resides in one of the areas or one of the facilities, right? Now the fourth aspect of it is that, once you have this in shape, the fourth aspect is that now can I involve my extended ecosystem, which is saying that my suppliers, I know that, I have my capacity constraints or I have my tomorrow overnight I cannot buy a new equipment, right? That's not possible. It's a capex investment. It's going to need a lot of approvals, etc. It has a own planning in place, right? Now, can I look at optimization from the perspective that, the inputs that are coming to me, right, from my suppliers, are there avenues or pockets where I can optimize on my inputs so that the current plant balance that I want to maintain, right, that can be optimized if my inputs are optimized also, right? So then you involve your suppliers also because you found that your constraints remain in your manufacturing. Now can I involve the sourcing part of it, right? So I bring those actors like the suppliers or what we call it our partners in place to look at value engineering levers, right, which I talked about earlier. So that's how when we look at a manufacturing excellence program, it's not about only the shop floor. It has to be combining the shop floor plus your entire chain, which is your sourcing, your sales and marketing, distribution also, because then I can optimize on my planning and scheduling also. If my demand can be kind of having be relooked, right, depending on the customer requirement, I can reschedule and plan my assembly lines in a very different manner, right? So it's a holistic approach that we take, right? But the starting point is that, touching upon at an equipment level, at a package level, at a system level, at a plant level, and then scaling it up, right? So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that insight. And in fact, President, when we talk about sustainability, globally, World Economic Forum has already identified some lighthouse project, right? Which is defining the minimum energy consumption, then, quality rejection, so on and so forth, being very, very sustainable. And Rupert, you said, and we also agree and concur that it's a sunrise industry. So it would be really good to see some plants in the chemical industry, in the sunrise industry, getting recognized by World Economic Forum, and they're delivering these aspects of sustainability. Maybe, IGL or Silox or Godrej can take lead over there, right? That'll be the aspiration. And of course, there are a lot of other manufacturers in the domain, right? Now with that, I'll come to now, Prakash, like you also spoke about the water conservation. You spoke about minimizing those energy, and at the same time, you also spoke about like capturing the information is also very critical to know, what is the current status quo, right? Before somebody going ahead with deployment of further technology. So what are the challenges that you come across where you think as valued solution provider, being part of the ecosystem, companies like Rockwell Automation and our friends from this fraternity can elevate and support you over there?
So I look at it two aspects. One which you can control. I said like maybe about the product, manufacturing process, and then the supply chain. And second is what about the customer? Okay, well, how does a customer add value to the sustainability, or vice versa? What can you add value to the customer through sustainability? Okay? But based on our experience here, we need to be very clear on like maybe what's your position in the market. Okay, for example, the customer is ready to buy with some benefits which give us a sustainability. They are ready to buy. If it's greener, they're ready to buy, okay? As long as it fits with the overall requirement. They don't ask for a premium or other thing. If it's a premium, they do it, okay? But at the biggest benefit will come when the customer is able to transplant or you are able to influence a much broader base. See, for example, like maybe it's about the behavior of the usage. Like take about the textile industry, okay? We are being a very one small component, which is a critical component, one component being the supplier to the textile industry, okay? If I go with a greener product, which is going to save this much energy, the customer is ready to buy as long as it fits within his requirement, okay? But the biggest impact, more than 70% of the sustainability one is coming if I'm able to influence the whole textile market. For example, like if I can influence how the textile life can be extended by 3 times, okay? For example, if a shirt typically go for 50 washes, can I make a shirt which can go for 150 washes? I think that's where you will see the biggest change in the sustainability, okay? But that depends upon how much you can influence the value chain, okay? Which means if you're a broader, like maybe service provider, for example, like maybe Rockwell Automation, if you supply maybe any specific component, rather than that, you need to provide a service addressing the holistic nature or the majority of the industry. Okay, so we need to pick and choose, because we can't influence with the sustainability everywhere. For example, like we do serve the tire market, okay, there it's a completely different dynamics. I go with some kind of the green product, maybe there is a higher acceptability, okay, because the industry by itself, it values it, okay, whereas to the textile, it's not that much, so because I'm a very small player. So here, our biggest learning is we need to pick and choose where we wanted to win the battle. Okay, you can't serve an entire different spectrum of market. You cannot go with the sustainability as a value for the complete spectrum of the market, because the value capture is going to be completely different from the position what you are in, what your product add value to the customer. Okay, so I would say that would be you need to pick and choose from the customer point of view. Okay, but as far as the internal one is concerned, I think the biggest one, like maybe I think digitization is good. Like maybe you had a very specific example. But I'll be a little bit contradictory, like, because in the sense, like there are, for especially the chemical industry in India, it's a very highly networked as SMEs, as assembly of SMEs. There are certain places, okay, there is a relationship being developed for many, many years, okay, and it works through relationship. If we start talking about digitalization, the acceptance is really very challenging because we are not able to convince what value addition can bring, okay? For example, the JIT, like maybe, for example, like we buy most of our material plus or minus 30 kilometers, like maybe whether you call it as a JIT or whatever it is, it's already in place. We call the supplier, he supplies me in next 24 hours the packaging drums. Okay, there if you start implementing the digital tool, like, it will be extremely challenging to define what kind of value, what you're going to bring. So we need to adapt to the industry or the ecosystem where we operate. That's what we are doing. Like maybe we start working on the digital tools where, for example, OEE initiatives, where we can valorize, maybe you're on the zinc, if we can valorize the zinc more effectively by putting some of the digital tools, that's what we are doing it. but not on something maybe on the supply chain side where we see there is a very effective ecosystem where we are dealing with multiple small suppliers and the adaptation is going to be very challenging. Like we are taking a step back. Okay, let's work on something somewhere else.
I think that's a good insight, Prakash, and what you said, like the approach should be life cycle centric. Like, when it comes to product, how the digitalization is going to add value there, and then a couple of challenges on where you said like you need to have the clarity of what value we're going to get out of the digitalization. That's called for maybe a detailed plan to work through, studying the existing assets and infrastructure, and then finding out whether an use case relevant to your business can come out of it, right? But that's a pretty good thought for us, and that's a task on us, like companies like Rockwell Automation and our other friends from the fraternity. Definitely, we look forward to adding value here, and thanks for giving this perspective. So with this, I'll also now come to Ramanathan, and the question is the same. Like when it comes to digitalization, what are the challenges you are seeing across, and how would like the solution providers like ourselves to scale up and address those needs so that you can get the value out of that? I mean, we can unlock some value out of that.
I think the primary challenge we're facing is integration of multiple technologies and multiple platforms. With the increasing requirements for conducting things like climate risk resilience or materiality, disclosures, tracking scope 3 emissions, which often reside in the data for which resides in various different parts of the company. For example, your logistics and freight data will be in your SAP, and your travel data maybe in another portal. Getting all that seamlessly integrated into one place, that is the biggest challenge we're facing right now. To be very honest, despite all this high-tech work going on, we're still doing it in a very low-tech way. And we download the data from one place and then upload it somewhere else. So somewhere more seamless integration of these technologies is going to be very critical for us. Because the sheer amount, we're just getting started on something as simple as scope 3 emissions. Let's take it. When you start delving into it, you realize that the task is actually very gargantuan. You're looking at 80% of your emissions coming from something like raw materials, and your raw materials, which are maybe say 400 or 450, being sourced from 150 or 200 suppliers. How are you going to get seamless transfer of information? This is going to be absolutely critical. Forget about reducing it. How do you even go about monitoring it year on year and getting real-time information? So could there possibly be a technology, for example, which looks at the annual reports of listed companies and pulls out emissions information from there directly in an intelligent manner? Because all that is available in digital format today, and the disclosures are mandatory. I'm just throwing an idea out there. So my point is we need technologies like this which make human intervention lesser, which make the data more accurate, more transparent, and more real-time. That is the biggest challenge today. It exists in individual pockets. I'll give you the same example of the LCA studies. Great, LCA is a fairly established tool. The database exists, it's very vast. The tool can now, you can run an LCA and get results in a couple of weeks for every product now, if you have the input information. Can I use a library of, say, 70% of my products from LCAs to build a very intelligent new product framework, which tells you at a design stage itself, these chemicals are go, these chemicals are no-go, these processes are okay, these processes are not okay. That's the level of intelligence we're talking about, integrating other various technologies, various platforms into smarter decision-making. At the end of that, like I said, you mentioned, that's a very important statement. We're running out of time. So we need things that do things faster. We need technology that helps us do things faster. We can't afford to be at the same pace. And that's where the real challenge really lies.
Absolutely, and thanks for giving that perspective. And I think the onus is on all of us to become more agile and more nimble, right? That's the need of the hour. And integration is key, and that's where, probably, companies like ourselves can do a lot of value adds. And if you look at civil manufacturing process, I can directly relate to, let's say, an automotive tire manufacturing process where thousands of components gets into it with a lot of raw material suppliers from across, right? Now, let's say there is a tire burst due to some quality issue. The end user wants to know, which product or which manufacturer caused that problem. So that comes to a detailed integration of the assets, domain study, data scientists all together. And I think there is a way to solve the problem, and it will be a good, deeper discussion going forward. And that's something we'll be looking up to. Thank you so much for that. And now Coming to the last part of the discussion is, we've been speaking about sustainability and digitalization, right? And then the ask is like, if somebody has to deploy digitalization, it has to be changed organizationally, maybe top down, bottoms up. There should be cultural shift across, not only within the organization, even companies who are dependent on their entire supply chain, right? Suppliers, consumers, distributors, people, there has to be a cultural change. Even sustainability can achieve and reap the best dividend out of this only when there is a solid, cultural change. People look into this as a kind of immediate imperative need, right? It's not a choice. It's like something needs to be done. It is compulsory. So with that, let me come to Rupark, like on this cultural change within your organization and within your set of ecosystem of suppliers. What is that you are doing differently or approach that you have?
Yeah, so Partha, firstly, I'll try and reply to this question differently. In the sense that I think quite often culture is most talked about but least addressed. And I'll give you an example of why culture is the most powerful tool and differentiator as far as competitive advantage or disadvantage is concerned. Now, I was thinking to myself that India as a country probably has more ISO 9000 certificates than Japan has, but that has not made us better in terms of quality. And it's not that we don't have people who are not intelligent enough. The other thing, the first layer in terms of what makes a difference is know-how. That we all know. Know-how is relatively easily available today. Relatively. You can get people, you can get information. The second layer is strong systems and processes. Without delving into so much detail, is relatively more difficult to copy and more difficult to establish. And the third and the most fundamental layer is actually culture, which is nearly impossible to copy and even more difficult to create. But once done, it gives a much more sustained advantage and push through what we are trying to do. So let me give you a very simple example that I thought about. It's not even an example, it's... I thought about some, with no offense meant to consulting firms. So if a consulting firm were to go to Singapore, for example, when I went there for the first time in my life, I saw that it was amazing. In the bus, there were actually no conductors. So you would just see where you're going, you would put in the required amount of money, and you're through. Now if a consulting firm, for example, would take that know-how and bring it to India and advise the government of Delhi or government of Mumbai, wherever, that look, you could do this, they're doing it in Singapore. Is the knowledge existent? Of course it is. Can you put systems and processes in place? Of course you can. With things like GST and UPI, I'm sure you can have systems in place. But will it work? It will not work and it will fail because of culture. Often ignored. Another thing about, I've been hearing about various things that we can, being somebody who's come up working in manufacturing and plants, I think one of the things initiatives fail, whether it is statistical process control, whether it is quality control systems, is that people sitting at the top, which include us, fail to convince ourselves or understand that help is defined by the receiver. Once we get that right, the rest follows. I had an example maybe about 15, 20 years ago, and Dinesh is sitting here, I was not an IT guy, and somebody told me that, look, we have a project in Unikima, Malaysia, and why don't you go there, you do this exercise and tell us whether an ERP should be implemented or not. And they were having some small systems, and it was way back, much more than that. And I think the fact that I was not looking at it typically like an IT guy, I realized in hindsight, was the difference. Because I struggled to figure out what the real value is. So far, people had actually been saying, this will save this much cost, this will save this much money, and the people were just nervous. And I said, forget about what it will save, and don't even say how many men it is going to take out. So I spent some time with an IT guy, and then went on to this functional guy saying, look, if this engine works this way, you tell me what your department will deliver in terms of the benefit. And then I remember when I presented it to the head of Asia Pacific, he told me, Rupark, you brought me from a stage from why the hell should I spend this money to why the hell am I not spending this money. I think it's about making sure that the help is being defined by the receiver. It's very important. You know, and there's a saying in English, Raman talked about the fact that people write at an operator level are absolutely crucial. And that's because there's a saying in English, and it's so true, that no revolution ever in the world, and think about it, was ever led by a monarch. No revolution ever. Think about it. Therefore, it's extremely important, and I do want to talk about a few things on culture since you gave me an opportunity. I think I also read a saying somewhere, and it said, look, you can't transform anybody. We can only try and change ourselves so that others are possibly inspired to change. And that is one aspect of bringing about a cultural change, whether it is digital, whether it is sustainability. Particularly from a sustainability perspective, I think we need a tremendous amount of awareness. That's missing. You know, I often ask a question at the risk of being kind of behaving in a manner which is not fit to a corporate CEO, is to ask this question seriously, is do businesses exist to make profit? And there's no catch here. Or do businesses make profit to exist? Once we understand this, we understand sustainability. And once we understand this, and once our organization understand that we understand this, you will see a cultural change. And unless we understand this, we do not know when we write on our vision statements that our organization is run by purpose. This is what purpose means. Therefore, it is extremely important from a sustainability perspective to do that. And the other thing I realized is, one of the biggest culture and a change driver in my house as far as digital is concerned is actually my younger daughter who's in class 7th. And she doesn't spend a lot of time on the phone. And I'll give you an example. Somebody gave us something in bad Hindi handwriting to read, and I was trying to read it and write it. And he says, look, Papa, what are you doing? She went on, scanned it, converted into text, and that was much better than what I was translating. The point I'm trying to make is that the other aspect is to make sure that we are enabling and empowering these people who are much more, it was different 20 years ago. The rate of change is so fast that we need to run hand in hand. We bring a different perspective to allow that change to happen. And I think that is another challenge where, cultural mindsets are extremely difficult. It is very difficult for us to enable and empower, for us to lead about a change and lead that change as rapidly as it is required. So I think that those are some aspects of culture. And the other aspect is, it is amazing, all of you talked about startups. And I am beginning to realize, and I'm sure people are realizing, that 40 years ago, having loan and license was specialty. Lagat or license specialty tha. People were commodity. Today, people, talent, knowledge, that's equity. That's real specialty, and capital is commodity. And the people who realize this faster, and all these people who are all starting our new startups, realize that. And that's another transition which needs to happen in our organizations, particularly the bigger organizations, particularly ones which are stuck with so much that they already know. My views on, what some of the aspects of culture I think are important. Hope that helps.
I think that's a good insight, and you also touched upon something on like de-learning and new learning, right? Within an organization, a lot of people coming in, newer people are there, right? So it has to change holistically, and I cannot help anybody to transform. I mean, it's difficult for a person to help somebody else to transform. Maybe some guidance can go, but it has to come from within, right? Charity begins at home, so everybody has to align with that intensity of change, right? And once it is available across with every people in the organization, and at the same time it is aligned with top-down, I mean, the empowerment you spoke about, I think those things will be required together to bring in this cultural change, right? It's very important. So we have come to the end of the discussions. Paucity of time, maybe we can straight away go for 2 questions from the audience, and then we can conclude this.
Hi, good evening. I'm Animesh Jain, and I'm just representing one of the startups. So we have started up with 2 of the verticals. One is into hydrogen distribution, and another is in automation systems. I mean, that includes the inherent cybersecurity solutions. I have just two examples here, I mean, from both of these verticals. One is hydrogen distribution. So we have a fleet of hydrogen trolleys, and we supply it to different catalyst organizations, specialty chemicals, edible oil refineries, or say APIs or pharma industries. Example number one is, now we have all these vehicles of BS6, I mean Euro 6 standard, and we keep the emission control into our data. I mean, it is on a real-time basis because all these vehicles are fitted with inbuilt GPSs. We have, on top of that, traditionally fitted into the nitrogen-filled tires, which is not a standard in India for the heavy-duty vehicles, but we did that. Now, all these things were important even for us in-house because we keep everything on the Azure cloud, I mean, to keep ourselves ready. And I mean, as Ranjit said, for the OEE, so we understand the predictive maintenance of the vehicles. If the, say, DEF filter or the carbon chute is more, then we have to take care of that before it ends up in breakdown. We think it is also important for the end user to understand what we are getting all these data on board for us. I mean, to have the complete visualization on the real-time data, because what is scope 1 emission is for us is also scope 3 emission is for them. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen because what I have seen so far is the end user companies, I mean, this is what I always say, the biggest enemy of the sustainability is the purchase department of the organization, because they always keep the cost low from the vendors like us in order to keep themselves cost competitive to their customer. Maybe it is a public, end user for general public. So this is one point. Second point, again, for the automation side, which includes the cybersecurity solutions, which we also provide for API companies. And these are, again, some of the very large organizations within India, and a few are MNCs within India. We have given some solution for them, which includes automation with inherent cybersecurity, but that doesn't work again because they feel that it is not producing the value out of the cybersecurity or the automation solution, and hence that doesn't work very much fine. So this is my, I think, comment or maybe question to Mr. Saraswat or Ranjit. I mean, how do you see this? Sustainability is one thing, but I am very much sure purchase department doesn't sit along with the sustainability team. So, I mean, because they are the biggest enemies for them. So
How do we see what?
how do you see, I mean, what's your insight of having the sustainability to be implemented while also controlling the cost competitiveness within the organization and within the market?
One, that is a real challenge. Second, I want to give you my thoughts on why it is really hopeful and it is not a value erosion story. And the reason I say this is that, look, what we've been doing, in my view, for the last few decades has been bad economics. We've been, and you can question me. The thing is that science says, and it was said on the World Environment Day about 8 years ago, that the rate at which we are consuming our resources today, we need 3 planets. Now, we don't have those resources. Either they come from plants or they come from below the earth. So if I have stuff which will last me in my house for 3 months, and or if at current rate, I need to find a way of making it either generate more or last 1 year. Because if I am going to say that my value will be defined by a GDP which will be defined by high consumption rates, we'll continue to face this problem. And the reason I think this transition is already happening, GDP and value growth will still be there, but it will be defined differently. Value will be defined by the value that exists in terms of making a product or a process which enhances and improves lives and therefore is sustainable. So have hope that readjustment in society is already happening. Of course, you need to balance the short term and the long term, but I think the direction in terms of giving sustainable solution is right. We'll have ups and downs, but that is a given that we have no choice. And definitely if you are creating value from a sustainability perspective and find a way of managing your short term, you will create and going forward in an accelerated manner, enhanced value. So I hope it gives you some hope. I'm not sure whether it gives you an answer.
Okay, so we have now come to the end of this session, and thank you everyone. Thanks for, lots of thanks to the panelists for being here and giving your perspective. And thanks to our friends in the audience for, sharing their perspective as well. And it has been established ad nauseum that how critical sustainability is currently. I mean, it's going to be a compelling driver for every business. There is a lot of reasons behind it, right? And digitalization, technology, everything is going to be together to add value. So with that, we are concluding this. Thank you so much, everyone.